What's up, everybody? Want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Billionaire Belief Show. Today, we're going to be talking about building your wealth from scratch. So let's dive in. About a year ago, no, 2 years ago now, I posted some information on the YouTube channel. You can check it out. Basically, I put together a presentation pretty much about the same topic, but I wanted to revisit it because I noticed that there were some comments left on the video where people were kind of confusing some things. So I wanted to take this moment to address those as well as walk through the process again. More so as an exercise to demonstrate that while there isn't a absolute one sole path you have to take to get from scratch to where you want to be financially, there is processes that you must go through. There is a general framework, I should say. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And to begin, if you go on Instagram, for example, and you are a follower of many of the financial education, business, entrepreneurship, investing pages, then you quite often you will see different posts about different people sharing what they believe their steps to wealth, their steps to building wealth, yada yada yada. Now, the most important thing that you need to understand about these methodologies isn't necessarily the actual, okay, this person says you gotta do this, and this, but then this person says you gotta do that, this, and that. So both of them must be wrong. No, the point of all this is you want to look for the commonalities. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. So we'll be covering the general big picture. So like I always say, we got to separate the forest from the trees. So today we're going to talk mostly about the forest, not necessarily the specific trees. And let's dive in once again. So the first step you're going to have to take in your journey to build your wealth from scratch is you're going to have to start by obviously deciding on the goal. You're going to have to decide and get committed. And ultimately, for most people, the goal is, like I've said before, going to revolve around you wanting to break your family cycle of poverty. Now, in order to break your family cycle of poverty, there's some things that you're going to do that are not necessarily taught in school or talked about in the popular media, which is why you're tuning in today. But all in all, yes, there is a way. And the first initial step, like I said, is to mostly get clear on the goal, get clear on the target, the bullseye that you want to hit. And once you get clear on that, then it's about, all right, I have a goal, I have a target. Now it's time to plan out exactly what we need to do to make that happen, which is pretty much the next step. Now, within this plan, I can already tell you, you're going to have to get clear on some basics. Now, when it comes to wealth, the metric, the number that you use to gauge and measure your progress revolves around the net worth formula. And the net worth formula is net worth equals assets minus liabilities. That is your net worth. So if you are trying to build wealth, then that's going to be the formula that you use more often than not to measure your progress, to see if you are moving forward or if you are going in reverse, which is what we don't want to do. But that's part of the planning phase. You have to be clear on that. You have to understand, okay, I need to be balancing. Building wealth is a balancing act of assets and liabilities. So after you understand that aspect of it, okay, I have a goal now. Now I need to plan. Write out this blueprint. Give myself a outline, some objectives to hit. Now you're on the right path. So when it comes to some of those basic planning objectives that you're going to be in consideration, and when you're in the planning phase, you're trying to figure out what you need to do in regards to making sure you can put yourself in a position financially to be on top. So, for example, let's say you're starting from scratch, you're fresh out of college, and you have decided that you want to build wealth. So you obviously decide, okay, I want to build wealth, and that's boom. So you have a goal, you want to build wealth. Now, obviously, you're going to need to take a little bit more time to get some clarity as to what that looks like. So, for example, to me, building wealth means that I've broken my family cycle of poverty. I know that I've broken my family cycle of poverty when we have the financial means and resources to be able to handle life when it happens. We're able to afford for major purchases. We're able to afford for unexpected emergencies without us having to borrow money and put ourselves in debt. And that's why you want to have these plans. Now, so going back to our example, you've planned. I mean, you have a vision, you have a goal, you have a target. Break your family cycle of poverty. I want to build wealth. I want to be wealthy. I want to be rich. Now, because you are fresh out of high school, because you are fresh out of, not high school, because you are fresh out of college, you have a degree, more often than not, you're going to have some student loan debt, and you're probably going to have some other debt in regards to credit cards, maybe some payday loans. Income you may or may not have income, and if you do, it's probably low. But all in all, that's pretty much part of the planning phase. You have to get clear on where you're currently at in the here and now. So you want to write down things like, okay, like I have $20,000 in student loan debt. I have $3,000 in credit card debt. I have, once again, we're accounting our assets and our liabilities. I have, and more often than not, if you are that college student, you're gonna have 10 times more liabilities than you have assets. But you're gonna have these things, and on the asset side, maybe you are a little progressive, so you have $1,000 in your savings account, and you may have, maybe you were paying attention in accounting and you decided that you want to buy a couple of stocks, for example. So that's where you at on the asset side. So on the asset side, let's just say you got $1,000, and let's just say you got a couple of shares of your favorite brand, Nike. But on the liability side, you have your loans, you have all these credit cards, you got all this stuff. But you want to account for that. You want to get all that on paper, because you have to get clear on where you're currently at in life. Now, once you get clear on where you're at, now write down where you want to be. So you need to write things like, and literally this is specifically from an asset and liabilities perspective. So on the liability side, you can have things like, I want to have $1 million in I want to have $1 million in mortgages for my investment properties, or more than $1 million, I should say, in mortgages. 5 million in mortgages on the liability side. But on the asset side, I want to have obviously the cash flow from these properties, the value of the properties. I'd say you can add the value of the property to the asset column, or better yet, the value of the deed. Let's just say that. So we're not necessarily saying on the asset side, we're going to have the value of the deed for the properties. And then on the liability side, we have the actual mortgage. But then you're going to want to also have things like, I want to have a stock portfolio valued at $100,000, $1 million. I want to have a collection of paintings that's worth, whatever millions of dollars. I want to have, on the liability side, I want no credit card debt. I want no payday loan debt. I want to have my student loans paid off. So just start getting an accounting of where you want to be financially years down the line, and start off big. So start off 25 years down the line where you want to be at. So account for that. So let's just recap real quick. So we set a goal for ourselves. We've established a plan for ourselves. Now we go on to the last part, which is execution. Now within that plan, though, there's some very important metrics that you need to take, some very important steps. So part of those steps, one of those steps is when it comes to building wealth, especially if you're starting from scratch. Like I said, more often than not, you're going to start off with debt. So that's going to become the first activity, I should say. You're focused on getting rid of that debt. Now there are different types of debt, bad debt, good debt, et cetera, et cetera. But what you want to take into consideration is making sure you have as little consumer and liability debt as possible. You want to pay off those first. So consumer debt being things like items you've purchased on credit cards, So, your TVs and clothes, whatever. Whereas liability debt, are items that are taking money out of your pocket. So like student loan would be a liability debt, whereas a consumer debt would be, like I said, credit cards. So you want to minimize, if not eliminate, as much of your consumer and liability debt as possible. So that's going to be your first step. So let's just say you're that college student fresh out. So more than likely you don't have a mortgage. So you don't necessarily have any liability debt in that regard, but you do have the student loan payment and you do have the credit cards. So I attack those credit cards first. And before I even continue on this point, let me just say this. At the end of the day, it is always your decision. I don't have I'm not a certified public accountant. I'm not a certified financial planner, but I am living this. I am living this life. Now, I strongly suggest if you have some specific questions about things in regards to your finances, you should have an accountant. I have an accountant. You should have a planner. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm just trying to help you get started down the right path. So like I said before, you want to make sure that you the first step, you want to make sure you get rid of as much of that liability and consumer debt, as possible. And but at the end of the day, it's going to be your decision, all in all. So some people choose to pay off their credit cards and their student loans before they start saving to invest, whereas other people feel comfortable paying off all their consumer debt, but still, just making payments on their liability debt while they invest in different asset classes. But the decision is ultimately yours. But at the end of the day, the most important thing you got to take from this is that, you want to identify the debt, identify the bad debt specifically, and get rid of it. Like that's going to be one of the first things you need to do in regards to, starting building wealth from scratch. Get rid of the debt. And the reason why you want to get rid of the debt is because the money that you're using to pay the debts down, in a sense, is money that you aren't able to use to invest for growth. So in a sense, it's kind of like burning the candle at both ends. But all in all, it will just be to your advantage if you can, at a bare minimum, get rid of all of the consumer debt. And then that way you can then take the same money that you was using to pay that down and then start using that money to save, which is going to ultimately allow you to get to the place, to the position where you can start investing in different forms of assets. So first things first, get rid of the debt. After you've gotten rid of the debt, or while you're getting rid of the debt, the next thing you also want to do is be mindful of your spending, minimize it. There's a book I read a few years back by Ramit Sethi of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he makes a great point about minimizing spending in regards to frugality. And he states basically that when it comes to frugality, a lot of people have a misconception of it. They think that you have to be cheap. But the reality is being frugal ultimately boils down to you understanding what you like and what you necessarily are indifferent toward. So I'll use myself quickly as an example. Like I like Nike, for example. So I don't mind buying Nike, and I'm going to spend lavishly on Nike if I want to. But when it comes to now the cleaner that I use, or the socks that I wear, or the T-shirts that I buy, I don't necessarily. I'm pretty indifferent to stuff like that. So I'll just, get the most inexpensive T-shirts I can find, or hats. I'll get the most inexpensive hats I can find. But when it comes to sneakers and sweatsuits, I want the Nike stuff. So Ramit basically says, when it comes to things that you like and that you love, spend lavishly on those things. Enjoy them. Because you do have a right to like some stuff. But when it comes to the stuff that you don't necessarily, care for, the things that you're indifferent about, then you don't necessarily have to be cheap. But, pinch some pennies. And that's frugality. So you don't have to be cheap. Everything you buy don't have to be cheap. You don't have to live cheaply, but know what you like, know what you are feeling different about, and approach it accordingly. So all in all, yeah, if you like Nike like I do, then yeah, buy yourself some Nikes. But if you're indifferent about the type of hat you wear or the type of cooking wear that you use and stuff like that, then be indifferent about it. Boom. But all in all, the key, though, is ultimately you want to minimize your spending. You want to go through your bank statement. Most people don't track their income, so the only thing they're gonna have, more often than not, is a bank statement. So start going through your bank statements, and taking a highlighter and highlight. Or I would suggest you do this: get two highlighters, two different colors. Let's just say you have a yellow and a green. So use the green one to write down or to highlight all the purchases that you made that were necessities. Then take the yellow highlighter and highlight all the purchases that you made that were not necessities. And then after you do that, based on all the yellow items or all the yellow line items, now you have an understanding, okay, well, I'm spending X amount of dollars, and then start aggressively figuring out, okay, do I really need this? Why do I have this? And decide accordingly. Because more often than not, a lot of the things that you do have are things that you probably really don't need, but you just have them. So you just, so no, get rid of that stuff. Minimize your spending. Now, we've talked about getting rid of our debt. We've talked about minimizing our spending. We have a plan in place and we're working our plan. So the bulk of the first, I would say, year or two of your financial plan execution is gonna revolve around you getting rid of the debt, and it's gonna revolve around you minimizing the spending. Like, that's gonna be the main point of emphasis for you in the beginning, is just getting rid of the debt and minimizing the spending. Period. Point blank. That's what you're focused on. And the last important step in the beginning is increasing the income. Grant Cardone talks a lot about this, and it makes perfect sense. Like he always says, there's a limit to the expenses you can minimize, and that is a very true statement. There's only so much you can minimize. There's only so much you can not have to spend money on. But when it comes to your income, like, that has unlimited potential right there. You can earn as much income as you want, period. And you really can, ladies and gentlemen. You can earn as much income as you want. But what you're going to have to understand is that it's going to take time and it's not going to happen overnight. And that's where most people fall short of the glory. They expect instant results. Like it's some oatmeal that you just pop in the put some water in, pop in the microwave, and then it's done. That's not how this game works. You're going to have to put some time in. You're going to have to put some effort in. You're going to have to put some energy in it. And as long as you can stay disciplined and consistent, down the line, you will begin to see positive results. But all in all, the first level, I would say, of building wealth from scratch is solely about getting rid of the debt, learning how to minimize expenses, and increasing your income. That's the basics. And and once you get great at those three things, you've eliminated the debt. Now you're good at increasing your income, and you're good at you're good at increasing your income, you're good at minimizing your spending, and you're good at getting rid of all of your bad debt. And then boom, you will consider yourself complete with level 1. Now, here's some little caveats, some little things that I learned through my own personal experience. And one of the most important things that I realized while on the journey was that the moment that you get rid of your consumer debt on your credit cards, don't go spend it back up. I can say with confidence that I was guilty of that at first. I spent the time, I paid off everything, and then as a way of I guess celebrating, I went out and just started buying up more stuff. But I was telling myself, like, oh, I'll just pay it off later. Because I did increase my income, I'll have the money now. I can just pay it off later. But the mistake that I made in that regard was that the money that the money that I had been using to pay the credit cards off, let's just say that boiled down to $500 a month. I should have initially kept that same $500 a month and just start directing it towards my savings account, so I can start saving the money to start investing. in whatever investments that I wanted to invest in eventually. But, I made the mistake initially of, like you said, I paid off everything, and then I'm just like, all right, let me, I got an extra $500 a month. So I started, quote unquote, living it up. But that was a mistake. And I learned, because what I didn't realize was that I found myself in the position where I was, once again, I had figured out how to minimize my expenses. I got rid of the debt, and I increased my income. Now, that cushion that I had, which represents the difference between the money that I made as well as the money I earned, let's just say in that month, and the money that I spent that the cushion, that my cushion was bigger, but I should have started, like I said, directing that money to savings, because I was already saving a portion of my income. And that's what made me think like, oh, I was good. But like I said, what I began to notice was that, okay, I was, although I was saving, but let's just say that $500 cushion, I was spending that up on my credit card. So what I began to realize was that as my credit card debt would start to increase a little bit more, I was now taking money from the savings account and using that money to pay down the credit cards. So as you can imagine, what began to happen was that I was saving, but it was, once again, I was like burning a candle at both ends of the stick, because now because I was using the money that I had saved to pay down the credit card bills. Now that very, that money that I was saving was lowering my savings account balance. So my savings account balance was going down. My credit cards were going down. But because I was still spending, I wasn't getting ahead. And that was the mistake that I was making. So that's one of the things you got to be mindful of, once on level one, is don't start partying once you pay off all your credit cards. Put whatever debt, whatever type of bad debt that you do have at this point in your life, don't start partying. Now is not the time to have fun. Level one is just solely about you getting your income up, you building up your savings, and you getting rid of your debt, getting rid of bad debt. Like, that's the first level of building wealth from scratch right there. When I've spoken to everybody that I know who owns property, who is, financially free, that's what they all tell me. They all say, like, yeah, you gotta get control of that debt. You gotta get control of your spendings. And most importantly, you gotta raise your income. Because like I said, your income has infinite potential, but you can only minimize your expenses to an extent. But your income, it can keep going and keep going and keep going up, and it can keep going up. But all in all, level one is all about you getting rid of that bad debt, getting your savings up, and then getting your income up, and boom, you'll be ready for the next level, which is what we'll talk about later on the next episode of the Billionaire Belief Show. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, to recap what we've discussed so far, we've talked about building your wealth from scratch. To do so, we have to get some key points in place. Specifically, we have to decide that we want to be wealthy, get clear on the vision that we want to have for ourselves, and move forward. Once we have a goal, a vision in place, then we got to plan it out. We got to get a blueprint in place. And like I said, the blueprint isn't this rigid thing that you have to you have to do this. But the blueprint is really there just so you can have an understanding of the steps you want to take moving forward. Because like I said, life will happen. You will have to pivot. And that brings me back. Life is going to happen while you're working on level one, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, there's going to be some unexpected emergencies. There's going to be things that happen. So with that being said, what you have to do is understand that, yeah, from time to time, you're going to have to make some little pivots. So yeah, you might have to, because let's just say, the car broke down, and while you don't have your savings up yet where you want it to be, you might have to put it on your credit card, which means then you're going to have to redirect money from that you were saving to pay down the credit card debt. But once again, that's part of the process. That's part of life. But once back to income, but that's why you want to also focus on increasing your income, because the better you are at building up your income, the easier it will be to handle these situations that do come up in life when life does happen. But all in all, like I said, we have a plan. We got a vision. We have a goal. We have a bullseye. The next we sat down and we thought out a plan. We took an inventory of where we were at currently financially. Then we took an inventory of where we wanted to be financially years down the line. Not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3, not 5 years. I'm talking about 25 years down the line. Get an accounting of that. Then once we got an accounting of that, then we got to the execution phase of level 1, which is where, once again, we talked about we need to get rid of the bad debt, we need to increase our income, and we need to start building up our savings. And then boom, we do that. Now, some saving goals you can have, like you said, shoot to save up to initially get your first $1,000 to $1,500. But after that, then get your living expenses up. So, you never know what could happen. You might break your leg, so you can't go to work for 2 months. But because you were saving, you're not stressed out about it because you have the resources to take care of your basic necessities. So that's pretty much level 1. Another episode, we will talk about the next levels. I will bring on some individuals who are on the next level so that they can share their experience on level 2 and beyond. But to get you from to get you in a position to get to level 2, we got to get level 1 taken care of. And level 1, like I said, is ultimately revolving around you increasing your income, you building up your savings account, and you getting rid of all the bad debt in your life. So I want to answer your questions. I'm pretty sure you're going to have them. So feel free to comment below. Shoot me an email. Don't forget to follow us at BBWCN on Instagram. You can like us on Facebook as well at facebook.com/billionairebelief. But most importantly, make sure that when you do like us on Facebook and you do follow us on Instagram, that you click the link. You go to billionairebelief.com, fill out the form so you can get our financial education study guide, which is basically where we'll be talking about the forest, ultimately getting these basic components in place, getting the 30,000 view vision of your financial future in place. And then, like I said, we'll dip down into specific things, specific trees like income, like credit, like savings, like investing. But for now, like I said, we got to make sure you get past. We got to, like, once again, put you in a position to be able to get to level 2. But in order to get to level 2, you got to pass level 1. So like I said, answers, I love giving answers, but I'm going to need your questions. So hit me up. I love you. As always, Billionaire Belief family, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a stranger to tell a friend about us. And with that being said, happy Saturday to you. Make it a great day. Until next time, peace.